Well, Desiree, there's a lot of uncertainty around the future of the KwaZulu-Natal flood victims, 47 families to be precise. Those 47 families, Desiree, were accommodated in a community hall that is situated in Westville. And on Sunday, if you recall, the Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, Nomusa Dube, held a media briefing where she announced that those family members will be moved to a place called Reservoir Hills, where they were going to be accommodated whilst the provincial government is still trying to basically rebuild, the houses that they are going to be allocated to eventually. But what has since happened, Desiree, is that on Sunday, there was a resistance from some community members of Reservoir Hills who said that they had not been, communicated with, they were not told by the provincial government about this move to basically accommodate these flood victims in Reservoir Hills. And later on, the provincial government was able to reach some sort of consensus with the Reservoir Hills residents, and they were then moved to that place where they were being accommodated. A few hours later, Desiree, the owner of the property, since informed the provincial government that he is not in fact willing now to accommodate these flood victims in that particular accommodation, as he is not basically continuing with the agreement to lease the property to the provincial government. And he said that he is now selling the property and asked the provincial government to move all of the flood victims and find an alternative accommodation for them. As I speak to you, Desiree and Naledi, those flood victims are now being accommodated in this hotel in the Durban CBD. 47 of them are currently being accommodated here. But what has since transpired is that it's not clear really as to what is going to happen going forward, because the word that we are getting from the victims themselves is that there are a lot of uncertainties about their future, and they don't want to speak to us on camera because the situation, as they put it, quote unquote, has become very delicate for them. Well, a short while ago, the KwaZulu-Natal provincial government released a statement where the government was basically saying that they are condemning that incident which basically happened from the owner of the property in Reservoir Hills, saying that those flood 47 families will be, accommodated here, while plans are afoot to try and find an alternative accommodation for them. It's not clear for how long, Desiree, they are going to be staying in this hotel. But as of course know that that issue is an issue which affects really the finances of government. The longer they stay here, the more that the government will have to basically foot the bill in terms of paying for their stay in this hotel, Desiree.
Simphiwe, you're speaking about 47 families. Exactly how many people are we referring to here?
There's a number of people, Desiree, that have been affected by this, but what you do know from the provincial government is that it's 47 families. In terms of the actual number of the people who are being accommodated here, it's not very clear, but we are going to be getting a comment from the provincial government as to how this whole debacle unfolded, because the word that we are getting from some of the victims is that it's clear that government announced this move prematurely without in fact reaching any deal with the owner of the property that they were being accommodated in. By any deal, I mean there were no signatures in terms of that agreement, Desiree.
I know you're saying you haven't been able to have access to the families, but do we have a sense of the level of disruption that has been caused by this back and forth?
Well, Desiree, as you can imagine, on Sunday, they were told that they are going to be accommodated in Reservoir Hills. Very same Sunday, some residents of Reservoir Hills resisted that move, and they were then forced to come here. And what we are being told by the victims themselves, Desiree, who spoke to us, a short while ago, they said they actually don't know what is happening in terms of their lives. They are being told they must do this, they are being told they must do that. But what is clear to them is that government has to act, and act fast in terms of restoring normality in their lives. You can imagine, Desiree, that these families that we are talking about have been, staying in a community hall for about 5 months, some of them, disrupting really their lives in many aspects, really. Some of them have got children, and some of them have got, young learners who attend various schools in and around the area of Durban. So that, of course, has affected them a great deal, Desiree. But we are hoping to speak to the provincial government of KwaZulu-Natal and ask those critical questions as to how did this whole debacle unfold, and also where to from here, because really time is running out for the provincial government in ensuring that these flood victims do get proper accommodation, Desiree, because for many months now they've been saying that they feel neglected. The conditions under which they were living in that community hall in particular, are very appalling. Some of them having to share, a very little spaces within a hall as different families, Desiree.
Simphiwe, I know in this particular instance we're talking about the flood survivors, but just in terms of the overall story about the province recovering from the floods, do we have any latest information just in terms of the provincial efforts?
Well, Desiree, the key issue when you talk about the issue of the floods is how they affected really the daily lives of ordinary people of KwaZulu-Natal, and many of those, lost their family members, and as it is now still being reported that some of those family members have not been really recovered ever since the devastating floods which occurred in this province. But of course there have been many moves by the provincial government in particular to try and really, rebuild the economy aspect of the devastating floods. We've seen many initiatives from the eThekwini municipality, as well as from the provincial government, as well as the national government, Desiree, trying to really, rebuild the economy of this province following the devastating floods. But the question will always remain, Desiree, as to how soon can that really be, because many of the people who were affected adversely by the floods are still very much living in those same or in those similar conditions, if I may use the term. Let me step out of the shot, Desiree, and as I try and basically lay a picture of how the situation is looking like now. Earlier on, when we spoke to the flood victims, they were very much keen to basically talk to us, have an interview with us, Desiree. But after I think they consulted amongst themselves, they then decided that perhaps it's not a good option for them to speak to the media at this present moment, because they themselves don't have answers as to what is going on in their lives. That's one. And they also are not sure as to what is going to happen, after maybe tomorrow, for instance, because they are saying that, some of them saying that they were told that the provincial government will only accommodate them up until Monday, and they will then be moved to another location. Government is still trying to basically sort out that issue. But of course, those answers, Desiree, we will get from the KwaZulu-Natal government in a short while, where they will be responding really to how this whole issue is going to be handled going forward.